Good morning, and thank you for joining us for SBB Live. I am your host and the publisher of Seniors Blue Book, Amanda Barton, and I am beyond delighted today to bring you the Senior Housing Advisor Special from Senior Housing Solutions, Bruce Rosenblatt. How are you today, Bruce?
I'm doing great, Amanda, and thank you for having me. And glad to see that you're doing well. And I enjoy all your webinars, so thank you very much.
Thank you. I do notice you watch a lot of them, and I really appreciate the support. So let's start off by just explaining to the viewers today that are unfamiliar with what a senior housing advisor is.
So, it's an interesting question because, we all have financial advisors and we have legal advisors and we have tax advisors, but what the heck is a senior housing advisor? And so a senior housing advisor is somebody who understands senior housing. And so, I work with people and there are about 100 different senior living communities in this area. And so I work with people to understand who they are, what their needs and what their preferences are. And from that information, I'm able to help narrow down the choices based on that information and based on my expertise of understanding the different communities in this area. I have been in this business for over 30 years. I have overseen 75 different senior living communities in 14 different states. And so I understand the inner workings of the different communities. So from operational standpoint, from staffing, from marketing to healthcare, to budgets, to pricing, to contracts. And so I'm able to understand that on a high level, but based on that information, I'm able to help people and narrow down choices so they can make a very good decision. It's not an easy decision, but when you tap into someone who is knowledgeable about all the different options, it sure makes it a lot easier. It's sort of like, if you're gonna, do your taxes, well, you probably could do your taxes on your own, but maybe it's better to talk to a CPA or talk to an accountant for some expert advice. Same type of thing with senior housing advising.
That's fantastic. That's a perfect description of why you should reach out to a senior housing advisor. And I love what you said. There's well over 100 communities here in the area, and it's very difficult to have the expectation that someone's going to visit all of those communities or really know where to start.
Yeah. And I get a lot of people, they have the blue book and they look through the blue book, but it's hard to understand, one place versus the other in the blue book. And your grid, I think, is a great starting point in the blue book, but it's still, how's the food? How's the staffing? Do they, are they financially stable?
Sure.
And especially right now with COVID, how many COVID cases have they had? What are they doing to mitigate the risk? And so these are very important things that need to be discussed and things that I know about.
Sure. And so let's just jump right into that. Talk to me about how COVID has changed your business, your life, and some of the things that you're doing to adjust.
Well, I'm taking this very serious, and it's a very serious situation. When you start seeing that there's over 1,800 people in Florida who have passed away and, over 80,000 people in the United States who have died, this is a very serious situation and something that we all need to take serious. So, my business, I do a lot of virtual meetings with people and conferences with people. I'm holding off doing one-on-one meetings with people as best as I can. There are some social circumstances that I just have to meet with people, but right now and the way that things are, I'm really trying to do things virtually. Back in late March and early April, when we were all under lockdown, things pretty much grinded to a halt. And so, I thought, what do I need to do to stimulate business and to reach out? And so what I started doing is I just started calling people. I started calling, all the people that, I've helped move to different communities. I wanted to see how they were doing. I wanted to talk to their family members. And so I have been pretty much on the phone with people, constantly reaching out. I'm also on the phone with the different communities. And so I want to know what they're doing, how things are going at the different communities. And so I'm talking to the staff at the different places. So I've been extremely busy. I've also organized webinars. So I do weekly webinars with different people. I've had a rabbi, I've had a financial advisor, and I've had a move coordinator. And so I've kind of reached out to different people to tap into their expertise as a resource, which I think is important. I failed to mention when you were asking me about my services, is that as my company, our services are 100% free, and so everybody loves free, and especially in today's way things are, free is a good thing, and so my services and my expertise are 100% free to my clients. I get paid on the back end from the different communities once somebody moves in. But I'm talking to people all the time with no charge, which is great.
No, that's absolutely fantastic. And I definitely think that's important for our viewers to know. Now, how have you adjusted? Like, what does your new normal look like since COVID?
So my new normal is instead of visiting the different communities, I'm calling them and I'm speaking with them. I'm calling my clients. I'm doing the webinars, and that's pretty much my new normal. I have a home-based office, so working out of my home really is not any different. But I'm here, and I have my two four-legged assistants to help me throughout the day, and so my normal really hasn't changed that much. First, as far as talking to people, the only challenge is going on tours with people, because you just can't go on tours. But I'm setting up virtual tours with people, and so the communities are pretty much stepping that up and trying to give people a feeling of how what their community is like.
And that really may lead into our very next question, because technology really has come so far. What is the future of a senior housing advisor going to look like? So, like, are you going to be able to continue to do these things virtually? Maybe that will help the children that are out of state. Talk to me about what that looks like.
So that's a really good question, and I read an article yesterday that one of the largest internet search providers in this type of business, what they're planning on doing is developing an app. And so they feel that through an app on your phone that you're able to narrow down the choices. And you know to me, the future is the complete opposite of that. This involves people and families and emotions, and it's a lot more delicate than an app on the phone. And so how the future, I think, yes, I think the future will continue the way that it is. I think, doing things virtually and doing things, talking to people on the phone. I just think that this is the new normal. I have also, I've updated my website, which is sort of a cool feature on my website where someone can go on my website and say, I want to look for, a 2-bedroom independent living that takes pets. And they can punch in all that information, and that will help narrow down some of their choices. So, I would, encourage people to go to my website, because it's a very innovative type of program where you can start narrowing things down. But there's nothing like, people need to talk to me, and they need to, once you start doing that, we need to talk about the pros and cons of the different communities and the demographics and who lives there and what activities are going on there, and how's the food, and these are things that are very important, that need to be discussed on a more one-on-one basis. So I think the future, to me, I think the future is bright. I believe that once some of the restrictions get lessened a little bit, and hopefully we can go visit some of the communities, things will be a lot better. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of miscommunication out there because you see in the press about, so many, deaths in a long-term care facility. Well, and that's mostly in nursing homes. It's not in independent living. It's not in memory care. It's not in assisted living. So, a lot of, the media is really grouping all of those types of components into one and reporting, oh, so and so had, 4 deaths, but it's really could have been a state-run nursing home versus a privately run place.
Right. Our most vulnerable population, obviously, with this particular virus. Um,
And I want to add, that there is some fear. I would say that people visiting, a loved one or a community, or a friend at a different community, or going on a tour at a different community. But we go to Publix and we go to Walmart, and things could happen easily there. So there's extremes, and right now we do have to protect the most vulnerable. But I do think that we should be able to lessen some of these restrictions.
Perfect. And I know this is a great question I always ask when we do the SBB University panels. Tell me what advice you would give to someone that is looking into making that next transition and looking at senior living.
So I get asked this question quite often, and there's a story that I share many times during my presentations, and I'll share it with you all. And it's not like I've ever tried this at home, or I'm not some weird person, but the story goes that if you take a frog and you put a frog in boiling water, the frog will immediately jump out. It's too hot, the frog will jump out. But if you take a frog and you put a frog in lukewarm water and you gradually turn up the heat on the range, the frog will cook himself to death. Again, I've never tried this at home, so don't try this at home. So the frog will cook himself to death. And the feeling, the thing is that the frog doesn't realize that the water around him is getting too hot. And that's what happens when people stay at home too long. They don't realize that the water around them is heating up and getting too hot. And so, as people are at home right now, they need to kind of step back and say, is this sustainable? Is this, can we live this way for many years? Or should we look at another option? And, when you look at these different communities, when they have maintenance-free services and dining services and activities and exercise and transportation, that's a pretty good life that people have, worry-free. And I think some people may want to create their own worries, but you can basically live in one of these senior living communities worry-free and not worry about anything, and not worrying about running out of toilet paper, or not worrying about running out of meat or poultry or what else that there is out there. So, people need to take a step back and take a look at their situation, and thoroughly and realistically say, are things the right way? Are things getting a little warm? Is that water around me starting getting a little hot? And maybe that's the time you got to start thinking forward and start saying we need to have a plan. And Amanda, I know you know this, and we joke about it, but I do have a saying that I wish I could trademark my saying, and people always ask me, when is the right time? When should I be thinking about doing this? And so my saying is that it's always better to be 5 years too early rather than 5 minutes too late. And I know you've seen it, and
My favorite sayings.
and unfortunately, people wait way too long. They wait for a crisis to happen. They wait for usually it's a medical crisis to happen to say, okay, let's do something. And that's
Right.
not the time to be doing your research. This is researching different places takes time. You have to do your due diligence, and this is a great time right now where you can gather information, you could compare pricing, you can do nice little spreadsheets, you can virtually look at all these different communities. So this is a very nice low key time, low pressure time to look at places. And the other great thing is that many of these places are offering specials. And so you can get a pretty good price on something, as compared to what it was a couple months ago.
Right. And I know you had actually mentioned in a conversation that you and I had previously that business is good right now for you. Maybe the isolation that people are going through is causing them to realize that they need to start looking into services. I do want to ask you one more question. Can you tell me exactly what the National Network of Senior Housing Advisors is?
Well, Amanda, I'm glad that you asked about the National Network of Senior Housing Advisors. So for many, I would say for the last couple of years, people were coming to me, clients were coming to me saying, I live here in Naples, but my daughter lives in Tennessee. My son lives in Massachusetts, or I have, family out in California. Is there a Bruce in those areas? And so, in all those years, I would say, no, I don't know, or I'd have to, let me see if I can help you do the research in those areas, which is extremely difficult. So I did a lot of research, and I have formed the National Network of Senior Housing Advisors. So the first of the year, I rolled this out. I have we have our own website, and I have researched and embedded advisors across the country. I have about 50 advisors across the country of all different cities, all different states, from Florida to Tucson to California to Seattle to Tennessee to Kentucky to Massachusetts to Ohio. I have them everywhere. And these are people that I have vetted. I have, looked at the way they do their business, the way they, their history, their longevity. And so I feel comfortable referring people should somebody have that type of need of referring somebody across the country. So what also is the great part of this program is that should somebody, let's just say in Georgia, want some information about somebody, a place down here in Florida, well, then they can refer back to me. And so it is a network of advisors. And interesting enough, this morning we had a conference call with all the advisors, and we were sharing best practices with one another. And it's very, very interesting to hear, what's going on in Michigan and what's going on in California and what's going on in Kentucky, and just tapping into that as a resource. And so, that is just another service that I provide for people of being able to connect them with somebody in a different city. So thanks for asking about that.
I know that's a lot of work. I know that you put a lot of effort into that, and it's very impressive, and I applaud you for that, because it's quite difficult even for us when people call Seniors Blue Book if we don't have references in another state where we're not located. So I can empathize with you, and I think it's a fantastic idea. So kudos.
These advisors in these different cities, well, they have the firsthand knowledge of the different communities in their area. So
right.
It's one thing for me to, make some phone calls and do some research online about the different places, but I don't have boots on the ground knowledge, and that's where these advisors really come in. And it's a very impressive group of people and their backgrounds, and it's very humbling because people have amazing credentials, and they're in it with a passion, which I am as well. And so it's great. And so I enjoy doing it. It does take a lot of time, but it's very worthwhile.
I'm very excited to hear that you've done that, Bruce. And like I said, I'm proud of you. Kudos to you. I appreciate you and everything that you're doing for the community. And I just want to thank you again so much for coming on the show today.
I appreciate you too. What you do and how you connect people with one another is fabulous. And you and I have a lot of history together, which is great, and I really appreciate it. And if I could give you a hug, I would, but this is my virtual hug because I know
virtual hug.
We're huggers. So.
All right. Well, thanks again, Bruce. Until we can see each other again, I appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you soon.